By far, one of my most popular videos was my Hunter Avallone is wrong about race video. It got like well over 100 views. However, I did get some pushback recently over that particular video. Someone commented on the video and gave a whole bunch of different arguments for why he thinks the stuff that I said in that video was incorrect. And so, what I'm gonna do, because, I'm always in favor of responding to criticism and engaging in intellectual debate with people, I always think that it's important for us to engage with people that disagree with us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making a new kind of mini-series of videos, not only going through this person's comment point by point and pointing out the various things that are wrong with it, but also kind of clarifying a lot of the stuff that I said in the original response video to Hunter Avallone. So okay, let's get started. One of the main arguments that we often get is that academic consensus says that our position is incorrect, and because academic consensus points to the socioeconomic explanation for differences between groups of people, therefore the socioeconomic explanation must be correct. This worship of academic consensus is something you often get from people on the left who wish to combat race realists such as Vaush, but also people like Hunter Avallone. If you watch Vaush carefully in his debates with people on any topic, whether it's race or whatever, he will often make the mistake of saying that because academic consensus agrees with him, he is right. In other words, Vaush often makes the mistake of putting blind faith in academia and academic consensus, trusting them to the point where he believes that definitions of things should be defined by academics rather than based on what the actual common use of those definitions are, or what the historical use of those definitions are. Of course, Vaush won't do this in cases where academic consensus doesn't agree with him, such as in the case of his belief that the economy should be converted to worker co-ops, but that's another topic for another day. Hunter Avallone, on the other hand, does legitimately believe in academic consensus, in my opinion. He does legitimately believe that academic consensus does equal truth. However, academic consensus does not equal truth. There are plenty of reasons to believe that academic consensus can be created by other things besides what is objectively true. And there are historical examples and contemporary examples to prove this. If you know about the history of science, you know about the Lysenkoist movement in the Soviet Union under Stalin. This movement centered around the scientist Lysenko, who was the head of the USSR's Academy of Science. He was also a hardened communist. The Lysenkoist movement within the Soviet Union's scientific community proposed many different ideas, among which was the idea that plants would naturally cooperate with each other and naturally share their resources rather than compete for those resources. And therefore, it was perfectly okay for farms to plant crops near each other because they wouldn't compete for the same resources. The plants would evenly divide those resources. And of course, Lysenko, as you probably know, proposed a whole bunch of different other ideas that were motivated by communist ideology. And one of the most damning things that Lysenkoism did for the Soviet Union was that it rejected Darwin's theory of evolution. Why did they reject Darwin's theory of evolution? The answer is simple. Because evolution and the science of genetics was associated with the quote-unquote bourgeoisie and with fascism. To give you a background on this, we have to go back to the history of Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. The eugenics movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries was supported by many capitalists, such as John D. Rockefeller. The eugenics movement during this time was centered around Darwin's theory of evolution and Francis Galton's work. However, much of Darwin's work and Galton's work was used to justify some of the worst atrocities of the late 19th and early 20th century. Slavery, Jim Crow, the Armenian Genocide, the Holocaust, etc. These atrocities produced many academics that were extremely terrified of the notion of genetics and of Darwin's theory of evolution, and the notion that population differences were the result of genetics. In the case of the Soviet Union, communism was an ideology that, among other things, preached human universal equality and preached cooperation rather than competition as the natural state of man, which obviously ran contrast to Darwinian's theory of evolution. And so it was ideologically pragmatic for the Soviets to deny biological evolution, and thus Lysenkoism was born. Lysenko preached this biological denialism, and not only did he preach it, but with help from the Soviet government, actively suppressed, put in prison, and in many cases put to death any scientist who spoke out against him. And anyone who did speak out, well, they were associated with either capitalism or fascism. And what happened with Lysenko's theories? Did they help produce better agriculture? No. In fact, many people starved to death as a result of Lysenkoism. All because Darwin's theory of evolution and population genetics had become associated with anti-Soviet and capitalism and fascism. Now, we're not living under the Soviet Union, but Lysenkoism and the history of Lysenkoism does prove that academic consensus is not always correct. In contemporary science, there's also many, many different studies that do demonstrate convincingly that the peer review process can be biased, which is, of course, an expansion onto my point that academic consensus isn't always correct. There was a study done once in which the researchers asked a bunch of peer reviewer people to evaluate a study on a new type of surgery that was being done. Both copies of the study were exactly the same, except for one version of the study having a positive outcome and the other version having a negative outcome. But the one with the positive outcome was ranked disproportionately higher. In fact, there are many different studies that demonstrate bias in peer reviewing. If you're interested, the link will be in the description below. If you want a modern example of Lysenkoism, look no further than the end of the scientist James Watson's life. He had all of his Nobel Prizes and honors removed in January of 2019 over comments that he made regarding differences in intelligence between different groups of people in a documentary. Now, even if you think that James Watson and people like myself are incorrect, is it really necessary to revoke someone's honors because they said something that you think is incorrect? No, it isn't. The revoking of James Watson's titles was clearly an example of modern Lysenkoism. Okay, look. The purpose of this video is not meant to say that we can't trust scientists or academics. I'm simply saying that we can't take academic consensus as gospel like some people do. If 100 scientists say person X is wrong about issue Y, that doesn't make it so. This goes for Dr. Lin, this goes for James Watson, and this goes for the scientists who spoke out against Lysenko. Okay, thanks for watching. Guy who commented on my on the Hunter Apollon video, if you're interested, the sources will be in the description below. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video or agreed with anything that I said, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. This is Wolf signing out.